Hi everyone and welcome. It's been a whole month since the St. Patrick's Day Stout, so it's time to take a retrospective, looking at the vital statistics and a few lessons learned. Cheers! Now, to begin with, this recipe is credited to Martin Keane and his 99 brews in 99 days. Fabulous recipe, great end result, and do check out Martin's channel. Starting then with the vital statistics, let's think about the schedule. Now, the schedule all pretty much happened within 4 weeks. That was great. Primary fermentation was 2 weeks, but actually the fermentation in the bubbler really was all done within 3 days. But we did give it that extra time for it to mature, and then it was a couple of weeks in the bottle for carbonation. The end result, wonderful. So absolutely great in terms of the end result. The schedule was pretty fast, but how did it come out in terms of some of the targets? First up, the brew house efficiency, we set that at 65%. This dictates how many grains you need to achieve the gravity that you're looking for. Now, we actually came out at 67%, so that was pretty close, which means we got a little bit more sugar out of the malts than we expected. Now, there's a slight correction to the ABV, which came out at 3.9%, and I reported slightly higher on the day because I misread the hydrometer, and when I was editing I was able to sort of see the hydrometer more close up and actually realised that the original gravity was a little lower than reported. So we reported 1.044, and actually on closer inspection I feel that it came out closer to 1.042. Nonetheless, 3.9% versus a target of 4.1 was pretty good, and it did not really influence the taste because the taste has been wonderful. Now, in terms of final gravity, we came out pretty close again, 1.012 versus a target of 1.010. So I was pretty happy with that too, and that's what resulted in a slightly lower ABV. In terms of the volume though, that is where things did not quite work out so well. There was a lot of trub in transfer, and then there was a lot of trub in bottling as well. So we ended up with 6 litres in the bottle versus what I was really hoping for was closer to 8. Moving on then to cost, and the ever important how much did this cost, and it came out at £15.95, which means for a typical 500ml bottle, which you can sort of see in this glass, just shy of a pint, that would be £1.33. Not bad at all, that's a reasonable price, a good reason for home brewing, I would say. Looking at the table then, the main sources of cost were, first of all, the water, which I used bottled water for this, and I'm a big fan of Ashbeck, which I've talked about in the recipe itself, and then the primary grains, the Golden Promise, that turned out so wonderful in the end result. I'm also going to mention the carbonation. The carbonation of this has been terrific, but I actually used 9 grams per litre, which is actually at the upper end of the amount of sugar you use for bottle carbonation, but it was definitely worth it. Here then, to close on this section, the cost per bottle. As I mentioned, the 500ml was £1.33, which is just shy of a pint, but if you're more of a 330ml bottle drinker, then that price came out at a much more acceptable 88p. Moving on then, it's time for the lessons learned. A look back on all the things that were good and bad about this brew. Lesson number 1 was cycling the wort. I did this to try and increase the level of gravity, and I pretty much just sprayed wort everywhere. Don't try this at home, folks. I must admit, a brew in the bag does not normally cycle the wort. Now I know why. Lesson number 2, I was testing out a refractometer. Now, I'm getting used to it with the old taking the glasses off, putting the glasses on to be able to read the refractometer. So I haven't got a lot of lessons learned so far, but I did realise that even with calibration, it was coming in a little lower than the hydrometer. And I do think I need to take multiple measures over time so I can see that difference. I do believe a hydrometer is more reliable, but of course a refractometer is so much more convenient, particularly when the wort is hot and I need to cool down. And this is why I'm just teaching myself now how to use my recent birthday present of a brand new refractometer. Lesson number 3 is Irish moss, and the question of how much Irish moss is too much Irish moss. Cool, that's tricky to say. Well, it turns out I have been using more than I actually needed to, and by throwing in the whole bag at the end, I definitely used too much. As a rule of thumb, between 1 and 2.5 grams per gallon is what is recommended, and I've probably been double dosing that and quadruple dosed it in the recent brew. And the reason not to do this is actually head retention. Now, I seem to have got away with it on this occasion, probably because the Irish moss was a little old, but when it comes to Irish moss, I need to scale it down just a bit compared to what I've been using in the past, and certainly the massive dose I gave I got away with but shouldn't have done. As a side note, reading up on how much is too much, it was noted that wool flock tablets are far more effective. It does seem they are the preferred method. Unfortunately, I've just bought myself a new bag of Irish moss, but once that's done, I think I might switch and see if that makes a noticeable difference. Item number 4 then is the late addition of lactic acid. Lactic acid, reducing the pH, creates a pH that is very appropriate for the mash in particular. It wasn't until after the mash that I realised and added the lactic acid. However, I do think when I took the 15-minute reading, it was in the okay range. So for the majority of the mash, I was fine, and I just decided to add a late addition to bring it down just a little bit more within range. Lesson number 5 then comes to my weird and wonderful 10-litre demijohn. And I'll come to the lid next because that was a pain in the neck. However, also there's a wonderful airlock that just screws on the top, and then you fill it up with water to create that bubbler effect. However, because I didn't check it frequently enough, that evaporated. Now, it was actually stored in a sealed container, so not too big a deal. However, I do need to watch that in the future and make sure I keep the airlock topped up. So 6. That damn lid. That damn lid. It took 15 minutes to remove the lid from the demijohn. I do now know the answer though. Just a little food grade grease will sort the whole thing out and make it easy to remove. Lesson learned. Lesson number 7 then comes to the bottling bucket. Now, I am a fan of the bottling bucket, as I explained at the time. However, it does come with that risk of oxidization, and even though I give it a little blast of CO2, it's a little bit of hit and hope as far as that's concerned. However, there is an upside to it, and that is the reason why I use it. The first of those is to make sure that actually I remove as much trub as possible, and we saw in the video that actually there was trub left behind at both stages. The second is the even distribution of sugar for that bottling. Rather than adding individual sugar to each bottle, it made sure the sugar was evenly distributed throughout the whole wort before I moved to the bottle and we started the process of bottle carbonation. And last but not least is the fact that during the bottling process, you can do it in a much more sedate manner by sitting down and doing all the bottling from a relaxed position. What more could you ask for? So finally, I'm going to come to lesson number 8, which is the bottle carbonation. I did use the maximum amount of carbonation sugar that's recommended, 9 grams per litre, to give that wonderful carbonation end result that we had. The typical range is anywhere between 2 and 9, and Brewfather gives you some good tips and advice in terms of how much different types of sugar you would need depending on your choice. This time we use priming sugar or corn sugar, and that works really well because it dissolves so easily in the wort. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I'm really enjoying the Homebrew Master Plan, so please do like and subscribe and feel free to comment. I'd love to hear your feedback, lessons learned and retrospectives too. Good health to you all. Cheers.